is just fantastic.
Hello everyone, welcome to the exhibition of stupid people. Today we're going to start by revisiting a subject from last week concerning the Willy Wonka experience in Glasgow, where police were last week called to this £35 a head event for being nothing more than a fraud, a scam, a low-budget soft play without anything remotely soft to play in, where children were left crying because of a made-up villain and AI was used not only for the script, but for all the promotional art. Actors looked very depressed. It was, quite frankly, hilarious. If you want additional context, go watch last week's EOSP for that. Parents had demanded a refund for this, and they were given their refund. The organiser, Dylan Roberts, said, "I, along with countless others, have been deeply affected by the closure of the Willy Wonka experience. This unique attraction has brought joy and wonder to thousands of visitors since its opening. It is more than just a tourist spot, it's a place where dreams come alive and imagination runs wild." Jeez, I can't finish the sentence. The public demand for its reopening is overwhelming. On change.org, there is a petition demanding it be reopened, and at time of recording, oh boy, yes, it has signatures. Over 3,000 at time of recording. Glasgow City Council, though, have been reached out for a call to action because of this petition, in case you didn't know. The authority itself, though, has distanced itself from the event, with a spokesperson saying, "We had nothing to do with this event. The Willy Wonka experience was a private event and was not held at a council venue. I feel sorry, and I will maintain it not only for the customers who are gullible, but for those who are paid as actors to perform. Some of the Oompa Loompas conceding that it was the worst job of their life and people have been remarkably cruel towards them, some of whom have actually featured on television because this has given them 15 minutes of fame. Not even a joke." I feel like this is one hell of a troll and a very amusing way to start, because getting 3,000 signatures on a change.org petition demanding this be brought back as some kind of, well, yeah, cultural icon, I guess, is hilarious to me. But I am not remotely surprised that the internet would be weaponized in such a way to put this on a pedestal in the way that it has been. At this point within the exhibition of stupid people, it wouldn't be an exhibition of stupid people if we didn't mention some eco-warriors doing their damnedest to get their point across. This time, two, and they've been dubbed as such, eco-clowns according to this article, yes, from the Daily Mail, so by all means discard a lot of it, have been charged and arrested by the police after they wasted good jam and porridge onto a bust of Queen Victoria, along with spraying the word "See you next Tuesday" onto the plinth. Because I'm not a complete dickhead, I'm not going to pretend to be able to pronounce the first name on the screen here. Yeah, that and Hannah Taylor also glued themselves to the bust's plinth. This took place in Glasgow's Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum. They are part of the This Is Rigged group, and said the protest, which took place at around midday, was against increasing food insecurity. The first person is an Irish activist, that explains why I can't pronounce her name, and community food worker in Glasgow, who said, "We refuse to be dragged back to the Victorian era. Diseases of starvation, including scurvy and rickets, are on the rise. Freedom begins with breakfast, and if you can't understand that, we'll shove it in your face. Food is a human right, and we call out the rotten systems under which we are suffering." This particular incident came on the same day as other activists from This Is Rigged disrupting the World Athletic Championships in Glasgow by running onto the track with Palestinian flags before they were then summarily removed by security. The Palestine debate is a very hotly contested one. The discussion on food insecurity is a very important one, because what is or is not a human right is also quite contested. Can you argue that food is a human right? I am not, by the way, saying it isn't, just to be clear, before someone now says that that's what I clearly am implying. No, I am merely saying this can be debated by a lot of people. I've always held the belief that I have to earn everything I have. It's a vitally important aspect of my belief system. Other stunts carried out by this group this year include occupying the royal dining room at the Palace of Holyrood House. During that, the protesters crossed a security barrier, sat down at the table before eating food out of plastic containers and drinking tea from flasks. Their actions meant an entire wing of the royal household had to be temporarily closed to the public. Disrupting the higher echelons of society, as it were, or the middle classes, still doesn't quite yield the outcome they might well think. Wasting food as well seems a bit redundant to me as well. More and more people are having to rely on things like food banks. I don't see that as changing anytime soon. I really don't believe it will. So I would not want to waste what food there is by smearing it over busts, knowing it will simply then be washed off and discarded. That jar of jam can actually feed a lot of people with bread for quite some time, or a spoonful in the porridge in fact, and it will go a long way. The same can be said for the porridge in fact. I understand the need to get one's perspective when it comes to food insecurity out of there, into the world, so the message is driven home. But does this achieve anything really? No, because you've chosen to do it at a time where the financial budget for the United Kingdom was just announced, and I'll be honest, more attention's going to be on that than on you. You chose the most inopportune moment to try and do it, and yet again further proving credentials of the middle classes by doing it in places where less people are less likely to see it, as opposed to more people being more likely to see it. The World Athletics stunt didn't really accomplish much either, because that was a Palestinian flag, not the food insecurity thing. I am curious to know what people think about whether or not having access to food is a human right, because that does sometimes lead to debates on whether or not government should provide a basic income. Some countries do that in fact. Maybe basic rights to certain foods and rations, and then everything else is on you. I don't delve into these conversations on purpose because they get quite hot and contested. As a small update to those who were arrested, they were charged, and were released for an undertaking to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court at a later date. Because it's Scotland, unless they do something that can be considered hate speech, they'll be fine. They won't even get a slap on the wrist. And we all know that to be true. While we're in the ballpark of being eco-friendly and helping other people, let's now talk about the wildlife charity, the WWF, more notably the UK branch, who recently shelved a report that warned how intensive chicken production is devastating the River Wye. Since 2018, the charity has received more than £6 million in donations from supermarkets chain Tesco, which has faced action from campaigners over the decline of the river, because many of the intensive poultry farms in the river's catchment area are in its supply chain. The charity was due to publish a report on fixing the food system, which included the impact of intensive chicken farming on the river. The 2022 report, though, was pulled, allegedly because of concerns raised about the potential fallout, because naturally optics are what we really care about here, and not protecting the environment so that we can maintain and sustain and grow. Okay. The WWF themselves say that the report failed to meet its rigorous standards, and the decision is not linked to what everyone else believes it's linked to, and that's the fact that Tesco has donated so much to them over the years, and this would paint Tesco in a bad light. A source with knowledge of the decision, so an unknown, said that shelving the report was completely the wrong thing to do. They didn't want to rock the boat. The attitude was, we're going after a partner, what's the point? Which on the face of it seems a bit peculiar, because the partnership between Tesco and the WWF ran from 2018 to 2023, and it focused on tackling environmental impacts in the food system. Surely then you would want to highlight if there's some hypocrisy by those that have donated towards you. The supermarket provided funding in the range of between £500,000 and £2 million for each year of this partnership. The UK, as far as food goes, imports a vast amount of its food because we don't have the landmass to be able to sustain our own people. That is well known. This country is quite small and people are so desperate to be here. So it is understandable many would want to not publish these kinds of reports that should be published, because they would want to be seen in the immediate future doing more to help people, not thinking about the long term, instead the short term gratification. I figured, owing to the previous subject also being related to food and environmental protesting, this would seem an appropriate subject to reference before we move on to talk about, well, last week's subject as well, Madame Webb. Madame Webb, with a budget of $80 million, has made $91 million. It is a critical and commercial failure. On Rotten Tomato, it holds a rating of 12%. In an interview with Bustle, Dakota Johnson, one of the actresses from the movie, was asked if she was bothered when people write nasty reviews. She said, "Unfortunately, I'm not surprised that this has gone down the way it has. I had never done anything like it before. I probably will never do anything like it again, because I don't make sense in that world, and I know that now. But sometimes in this industry you sign on to something, and it's one thing, and then as you're making it, it becomes a completely different thing, and you're like, wait, what? but it was a real learning experience, and of course it's not nice to be a part of something that's ripped to shreds. But I can't say that I don't understand. Sydney Sweeney had joked about the failure of Madame Webb on an episode of SNL, which is now one of the most viewed episodes in quite some time. Try to imagine my surprise that a thin blonde with massive tits would get a lot of views, who coincidentally can take a joke at her own failure. Dakota Johnson highlighting her not being the right fit for the movie, but then also talking about how the movie wasn't what it was meant to be, highlights two separate issues. The first is, clearly communication was not a key part of this process, the production of the movie. The second, you didn't see yourself when you were doing all the interviews, did you? You were a bit unhinged. It was highlighted in quite a lot of articles. I wanted to highlight this because Dakota Johnson's correct in one respect. She's not an actress for the superhero genre, 100%. At least she's willing to admit that. To attribute this to what the product was meant to be and what the product became, without adding your voice to perhaps consider getting them to deviate less from the source material and focus on what the film was meant to be, speaks volumes about how much influence you really have in these movie situations, and also the ignorance of Sony to continually push what people don't really give a crap about. And there is a rich source history for that of Madame Webb. They could have done something different. Although I would admit, there wasn't really much promotion for this one compared to other projects. It wasn't as verbal. We didn't see enough. And then I read the synopsis and realised it just wasn't worth it. You've wasted $80 million, not including the promotional costs. Sony, you need to stop wasting money. I know you've got fair success from your gaming wing. Yeah? Can you please stop ruining the profits with your pet project movies? If Kraven the Hunter fails at the box office as well, can you do me a favour and just stop making movies altogether at this point? Thanks. On the subject of people who perhaps should stay in their own lane, let's now talk about Doritos. I've had people tweet this to me, begging me to cover it. Now, I can't translate the video, so I won't play the video, but we're going to talk about it regardless, because, whoo, you could have been Bud Lighted. The person referenced in the tweets is Samantha Hudson. That is the stage name of this social media influencer, who was for a time linked up with the Spanish wing of Doritos. They featured in a Crunch Talks video published by Doritos Spain, which was removed 24 hours later. The reason why is because over a period of 24 hours, people delved into who Samantha Hudson was, and they found some of her tweets from the past and comments made elsewhere. For example, at the age of 15, she had tweeted, "I want to do thuggish things to a 12-year-old girl." In another, in the middle of the street in Mallorca, in panties and screaming that I'm a nymphomaniac in front of a super beautiful 8-year-old, dear God, and that I hate women who are victims of SA and go to self-help centers to overcome their trauma, annoying SLUTS. Hudson has since gone on to apologize for these tweets, indicating they're pure provocation and were solely done as dark humor to stand out. Samantha Hudson has been removed as a brand ambassador for Doritos. The interesting detail about those tweets, those comments, is they were all deleted, further proving that the internet really is forever. Somebody had archived that or screenshotted it and then posted them everywhere once that campaign began. This all speaks volumes about Doritos' inability to do any due diligence and properly vet those they choose to align with as a brand ambassador. I fully understand though there is context when it comes to the joke aspect. Unfortunately, when it comes to the court of public opinion, this is going to be used by anyone as a reason to absolutely lambast Doritos as a whole. People had to learn the hard way at Bud Light just how hard the internet can weaponize things, and boy did they go for it. Over one can of Bud Light. I was actively telling people to boycott Bud Light anyway because it's crap and you should all be drinking a delightful single malt. This has led to a number of conservative commentators and political activists and those who actually are within the realm of politics suggesting, who are more conservative leaning, that Doritos deserve the Bud Light treatment. Whether or not they do, I'm not entirely sure. They did act quickly to remove and disavow because they're not stupid enough. They're not as arrogant apparently as that of Bud Light. This is quite a fascinating subject when it comes to sponsorships and ambassador roles. But I think the more pressing question for everyone in my audience and those who might see this that may well choose to subscribe to the channel is what is the correct and best flavour of Doritos? I haven't had crisps in about 7 years. I miss them. But I did have a favourite flavour. What's yours? Correct answers don't get banned. Like I have the effort to do that.